nearing the end of 2023, and honestly, good riddance. It has been a roller coaster of emotions. It's like walking in on your significant other with another person, cheating on you, doing all the things that you wanted to do that she said that she wasn't into, only to get a phone call saying that you won a free car 20 seconds later. We've had some horrible PC ports, some hyped trash that came out and crashed and burned, and the only thing that saved us was the RPG scene. But thankfully, Larian Studios came out and said, "Hold my beer, and I present to you Baldur's Gate 3. A damn near perfect game." Yeah, there were some bugs. My helmets were floating, I had some broken quests, but amazing writing, top-tier voice acting, and the incredible use of the D&D mechanic system translated to video games. God, that sexy vampire just knows what to do, and that bear. Where was I? And of course you got Octopath Traveler 2. A fearful use of 2D and 3D, just looking like a modern art piece on the wall. And the starting points from several different characters that all slowly link together. Honestly, worth buying a Switch just for. And of course, if we're talking about legendary RPGs of 2023, I would be amiss if I forgot to mention Starfield by Bethesda and the legendary Todd It Just Works Howard. You know, Starfield... Owlcat Games released Rogue Trader. So Owlcat Games, for those who don't know, make some of the best damn CRPGs on the market for some of the biggest tabletop settings out there. They got their start with the Pathfinder system with the release of Kingmaker back in 2018. Then they moved on to Wrath of the Righteous in 2021, still using Pathfinder. Now they've got their eyes set on the Warhammer 40k roleplay system released in 2008 by Fantasy Flight Games and Black Industries. So Fantasy Flight Games, they would take famous settings like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars and make tabletop RPGs with role-specific books, all allowing these extra books to eventually mix in and make what would be like effectively a super RPG based upon that universe. So Fantasy Flight's RPGs would be split into several books that would all mix together, slowly adding in different life paths and roles that would all intermingle. This is their MO. So if we take Star Wars, for example, their first one that they released was The Edge of Empire. This would add in the criminal lifestyle, so your smugglers, your bounty hunters and such. And eventually, as that one came along and had extra books added to it, they would release the next edition that would be your Age of Rebellion, which added in your troops and your war lifestyle. And then they topped this off with the Force and Destiny books that would be your Jedis and your Sith. And all three of these books shared mechanics so that they would all be able to interlink together, and you would bring these all together and make essentially your ultimate Star Wars RPG universe. Well, they continued this when they got into bed with Games Workshop, when they started releasing their amazingly titled Warhammer roleplay games. You know, I bet they really had to workshop the title for that one. Get it? Games Workshop. Workshop. Oh, come on, I thought it was funny. Fantasy Flights would continue this MO with the Warhammer roleplay game, making a combined rule set that would be set among several different books, allowing mixing and matching within the Warhammer universe. They released books such as Dark Heresy, Rogue Trader, Death Watch, Black Crusade, and Only War, before losing the license in 2018 to Cubicle 7, and their take now on the Warhammer roleplay license with their release of Wrath and Glory. Anyway, with the history out of the way, let's get back to Warhammer roleplay. I bet when you think about Warhammer 40k, I bet you don't think of RPGs. You think of large-scale armies. You think of painting, gluing, moving lots of miniature pieces, a tape measure, and maybe just a smidge talk of heresy. So back to the 5 books of Fantasy Flight. One stood out amongst the rest. You had 4 books based in the roles of war. So you had the Imperial Guards in Only War, and the Inquisitors of the Dark Heresy. I mean, yes, you could run an RPG based on a war game, but with it being set in a war, you are really limited in what you can do with it. I'm sure a DM could make it work and it could be interesting, but it's going to be very limited. Out of the books that were released, Rogue Trader stood out amongst the rest, as this was a role that was not based on the war effort directly, and it opened the floodgates for countless RP role-playing elements within the Warhammer universe. Now I know what you're probably asking, what the hell is a Rogue Trader? Well, I'm gonna tell you. For those unlucky enough to be employed in the Imperial Man, your career options are very limited. You won't be working as a dentist, you'll probably be on the front lines as a member of the Imperial Guard, which are basically meat shields for some of the more select army veterans within the Space Marine categories, who probably will end up murdering you before killing the Xeno that was trying to kill you earlier. Or you might work in the factories, but even then, your life expectancy is probably the same as being on the front lines. For those who are lucky enough, you may have enough wealth or influence to grant yourself a title of Rogue Trader, a warrant that allows you to become an interstellar explorer of the unknown, making peaceful contact with unknown Xenos, bringing in trade, and exploring the warp, which may or may not be space hell. All glory to the Emperor. There is only the Emperor. He is our shield and protector. Unlike most CRPGs where you're an unknown adventurer on a grand quest to prove themselves, Rogue Trader is a bureaucracy title of high levels, a mere title that both inspires and strikes fears into others. Because Rogue Traders are tasked by the will of the Emperor of Man themselves to travel through space hell for profit, encountering bloodthirsty aliens, savages, unknown technological horrors, for profit. I would both be terrified, impressed, and turned on if I ever met a Rogue Trader. And I pledge by the Imperium of Man on the God Emperor himself that I will avoid spoilers as best I can. The footage will mostly be from the trailers and gameplay leaks that Owlcats have already put out on their YouTube channel, so don't worry about the footage playing behind me. And I will speak in mostly vague terms and scenarios without dropping any names, just to make sure that we keep it all nice and clean. Rogue Trader will have you taking on, well, a Rogue Trader, commanding your own warship, and then continuing your family's legacy as a Rogue Trader as you explore a new expanse called the Cronus Expanse. With well-written quests and a diverse set of characters and companions, it's another knockout hit from Owlcat Games. Even side quests have me hitting into the fantasy of being a Rogue Trader, with one of the early side quests in the game allowing you to address the families of those who died under your servitude, addressing now a whole bunch of orphans. It's moments like that that I know would happen in a universe like this, but you never get to see, nevertheless get to address it yourself. It's like role-playing as a king and getting to thank the surviving soldiers that served you under a siege. You know it would happen in real life, but I don't think I can think of a game that this has ever actually happened, where you get to take this moment to go through to that level. And it's moments like this that keep happening, and it's why I love Owlcat Games. It's their attention to detail and even the mundane. Which perfectly segues into the graphics and design, which goddamn they nailed this universe to a fucking T. From the endless grand hallways of the Voidships, which the only way to describe are floating cathedrals and cities and factories in space. Which segues perfectly into graphics and design, which goddamn they nailed this universe to a fucking T. From endless hallways to grand void ships, which I can only describe as if cathedrals and cities had babies with factories and a spaceship. You'll also continue to explore jungle planets, large-scale factories, sewer systems, other void ships, and maybe a little bit of space hell that I referred to earlier. Even down to the weapons and armor that you'll be equipping that drastically change both you and your crewmates. The art team understood the assignment and nailed it. The only critique I have with the art style though would be the character models that are looking really rough and dated. If I was a betting man, I would say they're using the same character models that they used for Kingmaker back in 2018. Maybe with a tiny bit of polish on the side. Splitting to sound and music, and this is where the Voidship of Rogue Trader really starts to show its wear and tear. The music is excellent, having bombastic orchestral music and vibes I would expect of a Warhammer game, failing to meet the tones of certain moments and scenes in the combat. The music doesn't shift and change appropriately, so you'll have these orchestral high moments for mundane things like asking someone for directions or for having no lettuce on your sandwich, to painful silence for moments of betrayal or death. So I know what you're about to ask when it comes to the sounds, because every time a 40k game comes out, the same question gets asked every time. How does the bolter sound? Boys, the bolter sounds good. Not Dark Tide's level of perfection, but it's definitely a bolter. Then comes the voice acting. Oh boy, the voice acting. I've got to address the Baldur's Gate and even Starfield-sized elephant in the room here, because Owlcat Gaming keeps doing this. They'll hire fantastic voice actors, write incredible scripts, but only voice 20% of said script. It's one of the most annoying and jarring things with being with Owlcat Games RPGs. It's like having your perfect partner. They drive you to the shops, they do the laundry, they massage you, they cook you dinner. But just as you're about to go to sleep, they fart in your face. Both Baldur's Gate 3 and Starfield are fully voice acted, even down to the side quests. However, only one of them has a story worth the voice acting, and I'll give you a hint on which one it is. It's not Starfield. But Owlcat Gaming keeps doing this, and with only 20% of the dialogue voice acted, and it's for weird moments as well. It may be the first time interaction with a character, it might not be. That same character may have dialogue for an unimportant moment of them just asking what food's being served in the cafeteria, while a scene of them proclaiming their love for you goes completely unacted. It just has a feeling of unfinished. And what makes it even worse is the voice acting is amazing. It's solid. It's a shy under the voice actors of Baldur's Gate 3, but it's so close. It's the equivalent of A versus A plus voice acting. And to have only 20% of A class voice acting is just a damn shame. And the use of the voice acting is not even consistent. Important characters might not get a voice, while important characters will have moments of importance that will have voice acting, might not have voice acting. Maybe they'll get a voice line for, hey, how's the weather? But when they're proclaiming their love for you, it's all in complete silence? Owlcat Gaming, if you're listening, the voice lines, get them in, get them recorded, finish the 80%, I'll pay for it. I'll explore the void. I'll clean the trenches of the Imperial Guards. I'll do it. There's just so much well-written text that needs the amazing voice work. Please, I'll do it. Which brings us to the combat system. Both in space and on the ground, you are talking grid-based combat, the tactical systems from games like XCOM, using your squad with their abilities to both boost and boon your team, with tactical positioning being the name of the game. As you explore the planets and void ships of the unknown expanse, you'll encounter enemies, and when you encounter these enemies, you'll take combat right then and there in that area, not being zoned off to a different area. You're given this brief bit of time to be able to position your squads before engaging in battle. Like in games of XCOM, standing out in the open is the quickest way to lose your entire squad, so cover is the name of the game. Unlike in games of XCOM though, if you do have a troop that falls in battle, they're not dead permanently, they're just knocked out unconscious. You'll be moving from cover to cover, using half cover and full cover for different defense bonuses while you try to flank your opponents. You'll be given a range of abilities to work with, from melee weapons such as power swords to chain swords that are guaranteed to hit but can be parried, so not really guaranteed to hit, to certain squad mates like officers that can give boost abilities such as granting extra turns, to psychers which are psychically in tune with the warp, being able to conjure up lightning storms, and psychic screams, which may have the side effects of knocking certain squad mates out or even summoning other unknown horrors from the warp. The squad is made up of 6 members, all with different roles and abilities that have a great deal of synergy with them, and it becomes really rewarding when you start working out the very unique terminology that Rogue Trader uses. So Rogue Trader boasts 6 classes with advanced classes for each of them. As you go through battles, you'll be leveling up and unlocking new abilities and boosting certain stats that can both be used in and outside of combat. You'll have the simple classes like your warriors and soldiers, which are your damage dealers, based upon either melee or ranged, to classes like the officers that give out boosts while trying to remain in the backline. The fights will start with you barely making it out alive, probably surviving just from one smart decision that you made way at the beginning of the fight, to eventually becoming a wrecking ball of destruction. Thankfully, when it comes to Owlcat Gamings, the difficulty can be tweaked to how you want it, from a walk in the park to punching your testicles with a spike. If you want the cover to be worse, you've got it. You can tinker with that shit. Crit chance too low, let's crank that shit right up to 11. Everything in Owlcat Games can be tinkered with, and Rogue Trader is no exception to this rule. One thing that I think really needs addressing though is the AI, or the lack of intelligence here. The AI will end up killing themselves 9 times out of 10. They'll go for these burst fires that will mow down squads of their entire own troops, only to get one single hit on one of your guys. They'll run into fire, they'll take cover behind the very obvious exploding barrels. It just needs a little extra bit of polish and maybe some self-preservation put in. And when the boots aren't on the ground, you'll be controlling your Voidship taking part in space battles. Functions mostly same as the grid-based ground combat. It's made up of 3 phases, where most of the time you'll be trying to line up broad shots and the clever use of crew buffs to be able to improve and maintain your Voidship during the combat. Most of the Voidship combat will be controlling your one ship. However, you can get additional ships, but it's mostly made around the idea of controlling one ship. When you play in Owlcat games, you learn that they like to put games inside their games. They've done this since Pathfinder Kingmaker, and with Wrath of the Righteousness with the Crusader battles, and the Voidship battle seems to be the flavour of the month for this one. I'll admit the Voidship battles are fun to engage with every now and then, but if the Voidship battles were to go, I wouldn't lose any sleep over them. Another thing that Owlcat games like to do is kingdom management or settle management mechanics, and like in the previous titles, they've continued this on, but rather than a kingdom or a city, we've got colonies. Planets that will become under your control through certain story beats or side activities, but unlike other games, the colonies are just a glorified resource sinkhole, granting you equipment and abilities. Quests do pop up here and there, but the colonies are just really there. They're a menu, they're a screen. You won't have too much interaction with them, not to the level that you had in previous titles by Owlcat games. Like in the other Owlcat games, the kingdom management is here, but in this time they call it colonies. So the colonies will be planets that will become under your control through certain story beats that pop up during the course of the game. But unlike games like Kingmaker, where you get invested and you really get into the nitty-gritty of your city and your kingdom, the colonies are just glorified resource sinkholes here. You'll be able to build certain buildings to give you equipment and certain abilities. Quests pop up every now and there, but you won't be as invested in spending much of your time at your colony. It's really just a glorified menu. You're an explorer after all. As you complete quests and purge the unclean, you'll level up, grow stronger, grow smarter, grow more murdery. However, Rogue Trader has its own terms for everything, from stats to how your abilities work, and the types of damage that's done. If you don't do your research to learn what these are, you'll have an unbalanced squad that will either be too weak for the late game or accidentally overpowered. Without diving into the tooltips and submenus, you'll be completely lost at what these abilities and stats do. Well, let's take a stat like agility. Rogue Trader uses agility. You know, agility, one's quickness or reflexes. You know what uses that? Demolitions. Certain skills and perks have tomes and tons of information on what these do, and without diving into them, you'll have no idea what you're putting points into. But if you put the time investment into the game, the machine spirit will begin to speak to you, and you'll have this eureka moment where the game clicks for you. But remind you, you've got to do this for 6 squad mates of 6 different classes. But I'm a big old mechanical nerd. I love having games with different terminologies and learning how all this sort of stuff works. It's what draws me into tabletop RPGs in general. But from people that are coming from Baldur's Gate 3, where you can make simple mistakes with your character growth and still get by, you might not travel in this universe so easily. I know what you're wondering. In most RPG games, your choices go down to good, evil, and somewhere in the middle. And when you're talking 40k, well, isn't everyone mostly evil? What's the morality system here? Well, it's how you choose to follow the Imperial morality system. Iconoclast, being good, and I mean generally good. So you spare the weak, protect your friends, feed the hungry. And dogmatic, following the word and will of the Emperor himself, Imperial law, burning the Xenos, burning the unclean, burning their artifacts, no questions asked, because if you question the God Emperor himself, that is heresy at its most finest, and you will be purged. And then finally, you've got heretical, which is, well, praising heresy. Praise the Xenos, anything for profit and anything for gain. Listen to those voices in your head, because those voices might lead you to profit and power. And of course, this will affect story beats, the endings, your character relationships, and what gear that your character can and cannot equip. Because if you're loyal to the Emperor, you are not going to be caught dead wielding a sword from the warp. And by the Emperor, I love this system, as in most games I find it hard to commit to even the smallest evil choices in these games. but in 40k, there are no good guys, so it's easier to get into the groove. I mean, maybe the tower kinda good, but even then, that's a bit of a stretch. My own personal morality system finds it hard for me to ever commit to an evil choice. But for some reason, I find it liberating that I can commit to the horrible choices here. It's so liberating. You know, I'm just following the Emperor's commands here. Execute those who abandoned their post. Purge that planet because there's potential heresy. And execute those people because they're getting a little too friendly with the Void. All in service of the Emperor, and may the Emperor protect. And speaking of duties, I wouldn't be doing my duties if I didn't mention the bugs. And I'm not referring to the Xenos of the unknown space, but to that of the game bugs, the glitchy bugs, that have become a bit of a standard for Owlcat games on release. And the gang of bugs are all here, from rubber banding when people are moving around the ship in the battlefield, T-posing NPCs, unlootable bodies, broken quests, and a weird one of a pop-up that will keep appearing for different achievements that require you to do 500 of something, and yet you do that activity once and it pops up straight away. The gang's all here. And these are just to name a few. They seem to be everywhere, from every fight to every planet to every station. Besides the broken quests, which are very obvious, the bugs are very blink and you'll miss them sort of moments. They're there, but you can miss them. At the time of this recording, Owlcat Games have been pushing out patches quite frequently to update a lot of the bugs that have been happening. A lot of the major ones have been resolved, but some of the minor inconsistent ones are still appearing, such as the achievement bug that is still broken at this time. They haven't ruined my enjoyment of Rogue Trader, but they can pull you out of the moment. Owlcat's writing is what gets me invested. The word is scale. Pathfinder tells the story of a kingdom, Rogue Trader tells the story of a universe. Between Rogue Trader and Baldur's Gate, it's day and night almost. You have Baldur's Gate, which is completely polished. It has an amazing personal story, large branching plots, all complete voice acting, with an RPG system that is easy for new players to get into, while Rogue Trader has a large branching universe story with a quarter of the dialogue, a deep RPG system that will not hold your hand, a quarter of the dialogue, and twice as many bugs. When this year kicked off, and I saw the big three of Baldur's Gate, Starfield, and Rogue Trader, my money was on that I was going to enjoy Baldur's Gate 3 the least. My logic and reasoning behind this was, Lyrium was a bit of an unknown studio to me. I never had a chance to play any of their Divinity series games, so I wasn't really sure what I was getting involved in there. Owlcat Games have always done bangers with the Pathfinder games, which have been deep wells of enjoyment, with only small things needing to be tweaked to get the series to continue on an upward trajectory. And when it comes to Bethesda Studios, I was hoping that Starfield was going to be a new IP, 6 to 7 years of not showing anything, that they were going to come out with a brand new game, lots of polish, and really showing that they've had time to learn and improve. This is why I'm not a betting man. Owlcat Games still comes out and pantsers Starfield and Bethesda Studios, releasing a finer RPG set in the stars than Starfield. It would have been nice, however, if they took a bit more time to polish out some of the bugs, maybe add in some extra mechanics to make some learning the game a little bit more easier for those not familiar with the 40k universe, and of course, bring in the voice actors to completely fill out the roster, but what you have here is a fantastic game if you're willing to learn the mechanics. Thanks so much for watching. I've been the Walshy One. Thank you so much for watching my review. If you've enjoyed this, please feel free to give me a follow. If you like content involving tabletop RPGs, MMOs, strategies, and simulator games, feel free to give a follow. We also stream over on Twitch. I like to ramble over on Twitter. And until next time, gamers, you have a great one. Hey, Owlcat Games, if you're still watching this and you're looking for another tabletop RPG to turn into a game, come on.